Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for another one of my guitar blogs. It's April 3rd, 2016. This week we're going to do a lesson on the truth behind teaching guitar. This week's question was sent in from Thomas. He's out in Sherman Oaks, California, and he wrote in with this email. I will be finishing music school this month, and I was wondering if you could make a video about the truth behind teaching guitar. I read on your website that you started teaching full-time in 1992. That's 24 years. Could you make a video talking about things like how you got started writing your course and what you've learned teaching all these years? I'm sure you have a lot to share. From Thomas in Sherman Oaks, California, USA. Well, thanks a lot for writing in, Thomas. Teaching music lessons can be a great way to earn a solid, reliable income as a musician, and for a lot of musicians, the balanced lifestyle of teaching and the set hours of having a schedule plus the reliable monthly income are all without a doubt attractive. Plus, the evenings are still free, later on. A lot of times I wrap up around 8:30, so I have plenty of time in the evenings for keeping a band or, doing solo sets, maybe going to a club or playing in a casino or maybe even just a small stage at a coffee shop or at a restaurant. So, what musician wouldn't want to do this? Well, there are both upsides and downsides to teaching, and this business isn't exactly perfect for every musician under the sun. So in this video, I'll be breaking down a few of the key points, I guess you could say, with respect to what's involved with the business of teaching music. Well, when I first got started, when I first began teaching back in 1992, my main focus was just 100% dedicated to organizing a curriculum. I was initially working from home, but within a few months, it got kind of hectic around the house, so I rented a small studio space where I was seeing just a small number of people, maybe about 15 people, and then it grew to 20 and 25, and so just, through a week. And even though my classes were later on in the day, I'd go in there quite early. Sometimes I'd even be there around 9 in the morning, and I'd work on writing my course material. I wrote all the examples by hand, and the pages were done actually on an old Toshiba typewriter. I'd photocopy charts, and it was it was being done very low budget, very simple. But I know back then, I had this idea that if I had a solid course for people to follow, that word would get around, and I had no idea that the internet was going to be a big thing one day, and I could possibly sell or teach the courses online. That wasn't even a focus of it. But I also realized that it was all of the building blocks of getting the curriculum together was going to take years and years and years to develop, and I probably wasn't really done that course till around 1996 or 97. It's probably 4 years down the road, even before that I purchased a computer. So, things were just being spent, completely hundreds of hours were being spent on just typing things out, writing out examples by hand. And, it was a lot of work. It was really a slow process. But at the same time, as I was going along, I was able to test it and operate, with the curriculum with different students, and I could correct it along the way and, fix mistakes and, just keep refining it over the years. The early days were really spent, getting started was really spent with the concept of having a course, having some kind of curriculum that was organized and would go, chapter by chapter. And, I was highly focused on that curriculum. And I think even today, without me doing that, I wouldn't have the kind of organized classes that I teach now, both in my studio and then what I'm able to do online, which is sort of the next generation of where I'm going with creative guitar. Well, while teaching guitar can offer a really nice way to exist as a full-time musician, it does have a few negative sides that a lot of musicians don't really expect or don't think about. They'll have to deal with these things, when they first start, and, a lot of times they're sort of foreign. And it's usually why people fail doing lessons on their own and go over to teaching out of somebody else's business or school or, the local music store at the end of the block and all that, which, you're going to make probably 50% or more less than as if you do it on your own. So the key is learn concepts of how and attitudes of how to do this on your own. Do it yourself. You'll make the most money. And these kinds of areas that will sort of have people turned off of teaching would be having to do with the fact that as soon as you start taking money from people on a weekly or monthly basis, you're operating a business and you have a commitment to other people. You're in business. You have a business that you're going forth with, and that means that you need policies. You have to stick to those policies. You need to collect the money on the right times through the month. You need to pay your bills on time. You need to pay taxes and organize your schedule and make sure that you're able to not only balance your accounts when you're taking money in, but you need to make a profit, which means you need some kind of budget, an operating budget. Otherwise, without that, you're not going to be in business for very long. And while some aspects of profit have to do with what you charge and how many students that you have enrolled, the other side of all this is you cannot overspend from your accounts. You just cannot do that because it will radically affect the overall net income of the business, which is how profitable your teaching business actually is. So you got to remember that teaching is not just hanging out with somebody and having a good time. It's a business when you're starting to take other people's money. So you have to have policies, you have to have strict rules that you follow, and you've got to treat it like a business where you've got a budget and you stick to that budget. If you do that, you're going to be in business as a music teacher for a very long time. Every musician who even contemplates teaching music as a method of producing their income or some part of their income needs to realize that teaching people means dealing with people in all kinds of ways. And you'll quickly learn that people not only come in all shapes and sizes and personality types and attitudes, but many of those people will simply not mesh with your personality, and you're going to need to somehow put all of that aside and just treat everybody the same. So does that mean that you're going to need to just accept it if somebody really does something stupid or repeatedly is rude to you or maybe is disrespectful to you or even your music studio? My policy is absolutely not. It's super rare. I could probably count on one hand in almost 25 years when I've ever had to just give people a quick talk about their behavior, or if need be, possibly kick somebody out. If you open your door to teach someone your skills and they're not respectful or they're not paying you properly or they just act like idiots all the time, then you may need to kick them out. Have I kicked people out of my studio? The answer is yes, I have. I just basically give them their money back and just tell them that, I'm not the right person for you. And, that's it. And if you don't think, though, that you could do that, you need to perhaps rethink this business. This is another aspect, too, with you teaching on your own. You have total control if you teach on your own and you run your own studio. If you're teaching for somebody in the local music store at the end of the block, in your neighborhood, there's very little that you can do. You may have to put up with somebody that's really disrespectful or is acting like a complete jerk, and you have no control over that. That's why I do not recommend working for others' music schools or music studios. Do it yourself. You make way more money. You make 100% more money, for one thing, is if that's not an incentive enough. But at the same time, you have no control over policies because somebody else sets the policies. And if you go to a manager at a local music store you're working for and you say, hey, this person's treating me like an idiot, is acting horrible, et cetera, et cetera. There's very little that they're going to want to do because they want that person's check every month. So, the flexibility just is not there. If you're teaching on your own, the likelihood of anything happening within very often, let's say, is going to be really rare. I'd say 95, 96, 97% of the people out there are awesome. They're super nice to you. They totally respect what you're doing, and they're totally cool. But there is going to be that 3, 4, 5% out there who are just idiots, and eventually you're going to have to let a student go. So you have to realize that that's going to probably happen at some point. So be ready for it. Overall, the years of playing guitar, I had a lot of different guitar teachers. I first started taking lessons when I was only 8 years old, and I kept at it pretty diligent there till I was around 19. And then from that point, I moved to Los Angeles, California, and I went to Musicians Institute and had even more guitar teachers when I attended GIT there. And, while all the teachers that I've ever had have had their good traits and, some have had bad traits and so on, the teachers that always stood out for me in my memory are the ones who had a method. They had a plan of some kind. I never went to their classes where I was asked, hey, what do you want to do today? They knew, what we had been working on previously. They had some kind of a next step in mind for what would be a good place to go, after that. They had an interest, it seemed, in where I was. They always had a good memory for what we were working on. And they helped me, keep going forward and moving on to new ideas. And, they had also a very unique skill to select things to work on that I could really get my head around, and I could basically achieve results with, and build my skills on guitar around that. And this is what made them, in my opinion, to be great teachers for me, and it made me excited to go to their guitar lessons week after week. So that's what I would probably have to say really is what makes a great teacher, is that focus on what's happening with the student, remembering what's going on, and then always have things to move on to next. I would probably say the worst of the worst guitar teachers had no clue what I was doing with them, and I didn't really last very long with those kind of teachers, maybe a couple of months, and I'd sort of just quit the lessons, because if you go to a class all the time and they're constantly saying, well, what do you want to do today? You don't feel like you're going in any kind of direction. But, I'd have to say the best teachers were actually, to be honest, the teachers that always were giving me handouts of some kind, different kinds of concepts on scales and arpeggios, licks, moving through songs, that kind of thing. So, keep that in mind, because that will make a pretty big impact on your students. Plus, those students will tell a lot of other people how much fun they're having with your lessons, and you're going to get more students out of that as well. When it comes down to what students will want to study and what they'll be like on a regular weekly basis for you, those people who maybe we'll just call them our great students, they're not always the ones who are going to be that elite group that practice 2 hours a day, and it's not always that type of student that has the incredible progress curve to their playing. Of course, those students are very interesting to teach. They're a lot of fun, in a lot of cases. They can even be a challenge oftentimes to find the right kind of material to keep pushing them along through and pushing them forward into higher levels of playing skill. And that's all cool and everything. Don't get me wrong, the students are very good, but the best students, the ones that you can sort of keep molding and fashion your other students around, will be the people who are totally cool with you. They love guitar, they're totally into music, they love music, they have all kinds of interesting musical ideas that they want to talk about with you, and they want to study in class. They know exactly what they want to do all the time. So you want to see what those people really are like really analyze those people and try to build that out of the other students that you're teaching as well, because that's going to make for a more interesting time through your evening when you're doing your teaching. When you teach people, they're super cool, they're really into it, they love guitar, love music, all that. A 30-minute class will go by like that. It'll go by in a flash. It'll feel like it's 5 minutes. So it really makes your evening easy to deal with, as a teacher, because it's just fun. Everything, the old saying, time flies when you're having fun. So those people are kind of what you want to have, as the mold for trying to fashion all the other, students. You can encourage your other students too, to say to them, next week, make a short list of 5 songs that you want to learn, or, next time you come in, let's go through this piece that we're studying in a couple different ways, and give them some examples, and keep feeding ideas that you're working on with that class of students. We'll call them the great students. And what you're going to do is you're going to build an attitude and a perspective of out of people who maybe aren't naturally like that. You'll start kind of edging them out to become people like that, where they're going to get more and more interest. So make sure you don't get focused only on trying to develop overachievers. Those students that practice 2, 3, 4 hours a night, and they're super focused on becoming the best guitar player that they can be. That's fantastic and everything, but sometimes that's really not going to be the greatest student in your classes. So make sure that you have a perspective in mind of what it is that you want to get your students thinking as and behaving as, in terms of pumping up that level of learning, so that the guitar is super fun, super motivating to be working on the things that you're going to be working with them on a weekly basis, because that is the way that you build the perfect student. That's the way you get all of your students to be great students. Teaching music is, I have to say, a really cool job. I love it. If you're doing it and you're successful at it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not cut out for it, though, it's really not going to work out for you very long. Not everyone is cut out for doing this. You need to be a certain type of personality. You need to be somewhat outgoing, and you need to be reliable, because remember, if you cancel your classes, you do not earn any money. So you got to be there. If you got classes booked from 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night, on every night, let's say Monday to Thursday or something like that, you got to be there for those people. Otherwise, you're not earning a dime. So you're also going to have to need to be somewhat of a business person, especially if you work for yourself and you're teaching students on your own away from a music store, which I would highly recommend. Working at a music store is just not the way to go, trust me. If you're a business person to any level, even if you're not, you can force yourself to get used to tracking income, using a database to track all your student payments and so forth. You're going to need to have some kind of skill with a basic accounting program, like maybe QuickBooks or something, to track your year end on an annual basis for taxes. All this kind of stuff, all this basic business skill stuff, it's all part of teaching, especially if your music business grows and you decide to really build it and have a larger location, rent a location, or perhaps hire out other teachers to work for you. But even if you keep things really basic, which I would probably recommend is the ideal way to have things going on, you should still work to organize your own approach, and be sure to have some kind of course, some material that you developed. When I look back at everything I've done over the last 20 plus years, I would have to say it's my curriculum, my eBooks, and all the course material that I put together that really sets me apart. A lot of people attend classes with me because, or even follow me online because of the course material that I have and the way that I organize course material. Remember, if you don't have your own method, really nothing sets you apart from everyone else out there teaching music. And now with the way the internet is, anybody can access people from all over the world to be able to take lessons with them. So it's pretty easy with things like YouTube and the websites that are out there and so forth. So have your own method. Take everything very seriously. Have some kind of plan. Have some kind of policies. Try and do all this on your own, because it's really the best way to go financially. And all the best of luck and success to you. It's, like I said, it's a very cool job to have as a musician. Anyway, that's about all the time that I have for today. As always, I want to say thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and if at all possible, this site functions off of donations and purchases of the materials that I have for sale. So try to support the site, because it keeps things going around here week to week. Otherwise, have yourself a really great week, and I will catch up with you next time. Bye for now. The Music Reading Phase 1 ebook has over 30 pages of comprehensive project lessons covering the entire fifth reading position on the guitar. Music reading charts and drills will work to help students memorize the placement of the fifth position notes, including important sharp and flat tones. Several original and classic pieces of sheet music will help students to gain a solid understanding for this region of the neck. Rhythm studies, duration examples, plus song and location drills, along with 19 MP3 audio tracks, makes this one of the best music reading courses available online. Music Reading Phase 1 is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at creativeguitarstudio.com.